So, hello, boys and girls. Here we are, cooking with Cocoanetics. Check it all out. So this is going, and do studio YouTube.com. This should be and just make sure to see there. Keep me live chat. Hi, testing. Alright. Hello, welcome, my viewer. I shall be working on the computer and use a lot of AI to do so. And happy to ask any questions. If there's anything on your mind about what I'm doing, or if you have some comments about what you see, if I'm doing something stupid, I'm happy to hear what your thoughts are. All right, let's get to it. So here's my. I'm currently working on refactoring the way how JSON RPC messages are handled in Swift MCP, and I'm leaning towards having a simplification there. So previously I had a protocol JSON RPC message that had only identifier and JSON RPC, so that I could have multiple different ones in an array, but it turned out that there's a problem with that. And the problem being, I'm working on implementing streaming HTTP, and one of the scenarios that streaming HTTP supports is getting an array of JSON RPC messages. And it's quite painful if that's uh, an array that can have different types, even though they have the same protocol. If you decode them with JSON decoder, you have to know the types upfront. So you can just say decode RPC message and it would get the right ones. There's ways around that. You can uh, have like basically a switch during the decoding. If certain fields are set, then put some other in. But again, it's stupid to have a heterogeneous array. And the best way that I found so far actually to deal with a scenario like this um, is to use enums. And in my OpenAI frameworks that I built for AgentCorp, I use that a lot. Basically, what you do is in the JSON decoder, you look for, say, for example, there's a field that says function equals, and then you can say, okay, in my code, if there's function, then the contents of function I decode as a function struct and put that as an enum case of the thing I'm decoding. So what you see here is this is a little bit refactored already with the help of Cursor, and I'm trying to streamline this. Yeah, so far I was able to boil it down to JSON RPC messages can be a request, a response, an error response, and then I have the empty response. Like for example, if you send a ping, then you get back an empty response, which is just curly bracket open close. And I had a special case for initialize response because where I was handling this, you return quite a few things, yeah, and it felt to me better to have basically set server info.name.version to specific things. And the way it was possible was, let me say it again, I could put it on a struct and then just put the struct on the initialize response and send that back. And because it was a JSON RPC message, that would still work. Yeah, but in this refactor, it's still a case in itself. But I've discussed it with Cursor, and Cursor also thinks that it's quite unnecessary. Do I have it here somewhere? To have a separate one like this. Though the problem is the normal response, yeah, has a result of string any codable. Yeah, this is basically a JSON dictionary. And my initialized response is any codable struct. So how do I can't join those. Yeah. So one thought was, okay, I could make result any codable, but then it's not enforcing anymore that this is a JSON dictionary. So how do I get a struct into a JSON dictionary? Yeah. And one suggestion that Cursor made was to actually just use JSON serialization. Yeah. If it doesn't have any special encoding, and this initialize response data doesn't actually, this initialized result is just a string here. Server capabilities is a JSON dictionary, anything, yeah. So these are all basic things, yeah. So one thing you could do is just serialize the struct into data, and then deserialize it also with JSON serialization into a dict, and then map, because this is then a dict of string any, and then map over the values, or you have to go through the entire, do it recursively if there's a dict in a dict, and make everything that's an any to be an any codable, yeah, so that I can encode it. Although, yeah, well, the problem is, yeah, my response requires it to be any codable, yeah, so that I can have the auto-generated codable thing. I could make a custom encoder that says, okay, for any that I encounter in a dictionary, make it any codable. But I think it would be possibly easier to just have a helper method. Or the other possibility is what one thought I had with Cursor was to uh, actually make a custom encoder that spits out a dictionary. Yeah, it's a bit of takes a bit of work. Custom dictionary encoder, something like this, where instead of JSON encoder, you create a dictionary encoder, and then you call dictionary encoder encode and this encodable thing, and it would make essentially a dictionary out of it, of string and then any values. Yeah, and it's a bit of code here, but are we afraid that this might not work? Yeah, well, there's this thing gave me a bit pause that for the various types I'd have to manually do some special encoding here. If it's this type, then if it's this type, then. Um, but again, that's probably not so much of a problem because in this struct response data, yeah, we just have strings, I think, for the most part. Yeah, string. Uh, there's these capabilities, this empty response. Yeah, so I'm thinking so either that or the serialize, and with this we can then get it into the dictionary for the normal response. Yeah, so one thing that we hear now, so uh, implement me the dictionary encoder that outputs string any codable. Add unit tests for it. Don't implement it anywhere else just yet. And I could have gone and made a spec for that, but a thing like this that we already discussed, it should be able to do that. If it's misbehaving, then I'll switch to okay, it's already generating. Why is it doing this in util? Okay. If it's misbehaving at times, then I'll set this to Claude 4 Sonnet. I've had very good results with that. Okay, let's see what it did. We've got our dictionary encoder and it's doing the tests now. And by the way, I could actually not be typing, but rather talking because I discovered that my Mac has the F5 key. Hi, I'm dictating now instead of typing. Haha. And then you just press enter and here you go. So I don't need any special thing because my Mac already has voice built in. It's just the F5 key is the microphone dictation key. All right, so it made itself some unit tests and they're failing. All right, so works for all cases except for coding an optional property set to nil. The test expected the value to be NS null, but the encoder omits the key entirely. It's actually standard behavior for encodable. What happened? How to fix? Change the tag test. This is something that's a bit annoying. I think that's the internal model of Cursor they use, where it just says, "This is how you fix it." Well, what good agent are you? You should fix it. So let's think. Do we want to omit it or set it to null? I think we want. Okay, let's not type. I think we want to omit it, not output null. Okay, now I cut it off quickly. Yeah. So now set it to Claude for Sonnet. And okay, this is also thinking. So actually, it's generating. Sometimes, well, yesterday and today, I get the feeling that Cloud for Sonnet is getting really hammered. It's gotten quite slow. Uh, Although I'm paying premium everything, yeah. Uh, I have crossed the $200. I think 2 days ago for the month, and I had to up it to not have the limit. All right. So here's my Xcode. Let's see what's new. Dictionary encoder tests. Um, so there's a test struct with some things, and I get a dictionary encoder, and then I expect here. Okay. Let's see if I run this switch. It should come out as, yeah, and it's any coder because you get this value. Yeah. Uh, it's not just that there's an int there, but there's a int value that's an enum of any coder. So any coder is really an enum of all the JSON types. So what's this going? It's okay. It's not working. And it's thinking a bit. Yeah. So encode nil, push null. Okay. Omitted one's nil. That seems to be working. Let's see what we got here. Dict. Yeah. So we've got our string any codable. So int value as a any codable. That's an int. So that should work fine. Yeah. Every now and then we want to commit with a, okay, now let's do it with voice. Commit with a single line message. Always have it. I actually don't know. That's sort of unknown to me how I would be able to revert to an older thing, because in earlier older versions of Cursor you'd have this button to undo, but I guess maybe nobody was using that. It makes more sense to do that with git commits every now and then. And here it did a git commit for me. Yeah, that looks like this, git log. Yeah, then you have here messages like this. Yeah, that's quite handy. You don't have to have a commit message that's like main update, changed file, but rather now it at least says what it did. Okay, so okay, now eliminate the initialize response and use the dictionary encoder to encode the initialize response data into a dictionary to put into the result field. It already corrected it. Yeah, so it's amazing. X shows me that I have 23 viewers. Well, one is my own because I have my iPhone here in front of me and I see if somebody is chatting. And curiously, this is another account that I'm looking at. Why is that? I have to switch to myself. Right. While we are at it, I have to give a shout out to Peter Steinberger because he quite inspired me recently with his The Future of Vibe Coding. He did a video and a blog post later. And the key was, or sort of the key learning for me was to plan, do certain planning up front with Google Gemini. Yeah? And why is it now having an initialized result here? We already have that somewhere. And by the way, I noticed a few days ago that there's a plugin for Visual Visual Code. It's a code extension that's official. The Swift language support for Visual Studio, which is even from swift.org. Yeah. And what this does is it has the Swift language server. And so just like Xcode, it indexes your source code and then is able to give you all kinds of goodies in the editor. Yeah, I still hate cursor. Don't get me wrong. I'd rather be editing in Xcode. But what it can do is it gives you these linter errors. Yeah, so it's essentially not just syntax errors, but also semantic errors. Yeah, like it might have put a JSON RPC initialized response completely fine syntax, but this doesn't exist when you compile it. And so this sort of shortcuts the process by immediately giving the errors that an Xcode build would give to the LLM, and so can fix them right away. Now I've got the rate limit, yeah, cursor and vertex AI. So there's a this we don't need, this we don't need. And so while this is doing that, let me show you. There's this other project I was working on, and that was on AI Studio. This was essentially the and by the way, STD is not a sexually transmittable disease, but it is a I asked it, it was a software SIS, software requirements specification, or it could also be software technical description, something like that. Yeah, well, the point was, I wanted to have a use case for it, or sort of a way to try it out, and Peter Steinberger showed this fleshing out of the specification first in Google AI Studio, and so what I did further down, I said some things, yeah. Okay, this is me comment of myself. So you can, oh, another thing I want to do. Hmm. So that's basically what I said here. I was thinking possibly I need to have another base. Yeah, so I for a long time I wanted to do something with Swift syntax. Yeah, I've gotten into contact or touch with Swift syntax from uh, working with macros on Swift MCP. And by the way, that's so awesome. I'm astonished that nobody else is doing something with macros. Yeah, that uh, you have these. It's here in the, for example, the Swift tool macro. Yeah, uh, where uh, it you get access to the entire syntax tree, and then you can pick out things. And in the case of MCP, as a reminder, so what I do is, for example, you have this MCP tool, and if that's built, yeah. So before it actually builds, it runs the macros and uh, adds some secret metadata, yeah, that it can only get from the syntax tree, from the source code itself. And once it stops building, yeah, so I can say, why does this not work? still some testing. MCP server, there's expand macro, and here I can't expand this macro, but I can expand this macro. Okay, so you expand macro, and here below this function, it beach balls. No, that was not what I wanted to show. Then, okay, here it pulls out the MCP server name, the MCP server version. Yeah, these are fields that are here. The name I overrode, and the version is by default 1.0, but you can override that. And then it creates a server description, which is the documentation comments of this, so that this is available at runtime via this private variable. And then there's this call tool, and what it does is for every MCP tool decorated thing, it creates a special function that just takes a dictionary, essentially a JSON dictionary. And with this JSON dictionary, you can call the original function. And if that would allow me to expand this, okay, now it does. Yeah. So here you have the metadata for just this function. In an MCP tool metadata, name, description, parameters. Every parameter has a name, has a type, has a description, potentially a default value if it's non-optional or not. Yeah, and what it also has is this MCP call, and that takes this string sendable dictionary, and from that it extracts one by one the parameters. So let's look at one that has multiple. Yeah, here's multiple. Now I can again not show the macros. It's odd, yeah, sometimes. And now it doesn't want to show it. There it does want to show it. I want one with multiple. Okay, MCP tool. Some want to show it. This okay. It basically for every parameter it gets out the correct type and then calls the original function. Yeah, so this try await greet with name. Yeah, this is exactly this function, and this allows me to call the original function with the original strictly typed parameters, but only having a JSON dictionary. Yeah? So that's the secret sauce of Swift MCP server. So where are we now? Okay, it fixed all the tests. Let's see. Actually, I want to also initialize. Where did I have it? Initialize result. Didn't I have? Didn't I have an initialize result struct before? Struct. Because I had something like that before, and it put it here. I can see there was an initialize result file that only had a single empty line. I replaced that with a move from the nested structure. All right. Let's just check that it did nothing stupid. Yeah, so we have the I have the MCP server, that has the, okay, here's the create initialize response. It makes the server capabilities and the JSON RPC response. Yeah, that's now a normal JSON RPC response. And server info and the initialize result. That is now the in models. Okay. Initial result, the protocol version, okay, blah, blah, blah. Then we have the dictionary encoder, and it encodes it. and then we fall back here. All right. Looks good. And some rate limit again. So implement. Did it already commit? Yes, it did. Eliminate innocent. Okay. So there was this other thing in my JSON RPC message. Now we have request, we have response, we have error response, and I still have this empty response. Yeah, and the empty response, this is odd. Do we need this? But okay, so how about the empty response? Is this feasible to roll it into the regular response? Question mark. No, that's the way I like it. So here's it thinking. So Cloud for Sonnet thinking. An empty result dictionary. So it needs to check how it's actually being used. I think I use it for answering to pings and also for receiving answers to pings. Yeah, because the client can ping the MCP server and then it would respond with an empty response. But as a regular response, create ping response is already doing it. Okay, yeah, I agree. Let's eliminate it. Yeah. We want to have this as tight as possible, but as strictly tight as possible. Yeah. So let me revert the decoding change. I want to support decoding empty responses as regular. What is this? Okay, yeah, there was a. This is what I talked before. Here's the init from decoder where it decodes the message. Yeah, and then based on, for example, is there a field error? Yeah. If so, then it creates the enum type error response. If there's one that contains result, then it's a result. And previously here, what it had was if there was a empty result, it would make an empty response, and otherwise a normal response. That's all being simplified now. Yeah. So now we have if it contains a method. The one thing that after that I'm still considering. So right now we have request response, error response. Yeah. And request and response both have to have an ID. Yeah. And right now here it's optional. So what I want to do, and there's this other case when it's just a notification. Yeah. And the notification, there wasn't a request preceding it. It's just, yeah, I'm done initializing. So that wouldn't have an ID. So I'm thinking to have a fourth type here, request response, error response, or maybe we just call this error. Error, well, it's a response that's an error. So maybe error response is still fine. But to have one for notification, the one place where this is a slight issue, or rather there might be a benefit from it. MCP server has this handle tool call. No, not handle tool call. It has this handle request. Yeah, and I think I'm going to change this to. Right now it's a JSON RPC message. Okay, that can be any of those. Yeah, and then essentially I have this. It needs to be a request, otherwise I don't return anything. And then it wouldn't ever, well, a notification would still be a request. But I'm thinking what I would want to do is if if you change this case to basically case notifications, then I have these two things covered. Yeah. Um, and otherwise these are sort of commands, yeah, or a request with a method, and that sort of gets more structured this way. Yeah. So I I could potentially react to notifications in a separate way. Yeah. Like to allow cancellation of things if there's a notification that comes. We'll see. Here it's still working. Need to add backward compatibility type alias. Empty response. No, I want to, I'm going to ask it to not do any backward compatibility. JSON empty response. Stop. Uh, don't do any backward compatibility type aliases. I don't want that. I just want to have my regularly new, because this is all internal stuff anyway. Yeah, nobody would create JSON RPC messages like that. It's only me in the unit tests, and it's some other places, and it's just craft to have like extra things. So let's see, put something in chat. Okay, that seems to be still working. And by the way, you can be the first one that ever puts a chat message to me on X. Yeah, I've enabled it for everybody, but I've never seen anybody write a chat message except myself uh, putting something in there. So who's ever going to be the very first that put something in the chat in X? All right, so we have this. And now add an enum case for notification and make the ID field on request and response compulsory, comma, question. Would the ID for error response also need to be non-optional, question mark? Yeah, so coming back to, while this is doing this, what I did here with Google AI Studio, yeah, I gave it my thoughts about it, and I can't even myself decipher what this is about a certain node of the Sari script. Somehow it ended up with a project goal and scope for the AST abstractor and editor. Yeah, primary objective is to pass source code into a syntax tree. Yeah, check this we did. Create a concise structured overview. So what I wanted to be able to do is, if you have a project like, for example, SAE, yeah, then you can do Swift run, and this has a command line utility. As a demo is the one we're interested in, and then that has multiple options. Yeah, and the very first option that I implemented was this analyze. So you can do analyze on sources SAE. Yeah, and let's do recursive. And what it does is it creates a cut down version of the interface. Yeah, so essentially for each file, it only shows the imports, then it shows the structs and actors, classes, enums, and then in those all the functions and properties. And what you can do is actually say, minus minus visibility public. Then it doesn't show you the private ones, yeah, and it shows you the documentation comment with that, yeah. And so what you can do is if you just pb copy that and then say have ChatGPT, here it is. No, that's not it. ChatGPT, yeah. What do you think about this project? And last time I did it, it had like lots of praise. Is exceptional. Is a detailed analysis. Modular focused components, as-aware code editing, precise node level, high quality documentation, powerful code distribution. So we can do something else. Let's say you are an AI implementing some functionality based on this component. What's your take on this interface description? So the clarity of intent, well-scoped semantics, composability and data flow. Yeah, it's long story short, this was a very nice exercise, and it I think it's quite useful to cut down a big code size into just what is the public API. And my thought was maybe I can have a MCP tool that would uh, if I if cursor is tasked with say implement something using this functionality in this API. Here's the complete API. Then it should be able to write better code than just having to go and how does this work? Do I find some examples and so on and so forth? Yeah. So that was the thought of this first part. Yeah. Then the run. This the second part. Does this work like this? No. Swift run SRE demo. I yes. So the second thing that I found, or rather phase two of this project, was when it passes the syntax tree for a file, it also determines if there are syntax errors, and it even goes as far as proposing fixins for it. Yeah. So what you can do is you can run the entire project through this tool errors, and I don't think it will find any, but I have some examples in the tests. I think tests. Yeah, there's some. It doesn't look very good because apparently the default is JSON. So let's put that format markdown. And here you go. Yeah, so basically this is very, very similar to the output Xcode gives me. Yeah, so for one file, it found, so this is just source code. Yeah, but this is the actual error it found. Yeah, expected the colon and type annotation because here's a colon missing. Yeah, and my thought was, okay, now I get the syntax errors, so maybe this could be something helpful for a code generator to, if it gives me some Swift code, I can very, very quickly evaluate, does this have some syntax errors? And if it does, immediately tell the LLM, there's a syntax error there, try better. But I at the same time, then I discovered this thing about the linter in Cursor, and that sort of made it obsolete again. Because if I have that, but then again, I might not be using Cursor, yeah, because in the long run, I want to have my own code generation agent, yeah. I'm reading some articles online, and it doesn't seem to be that much of rocket science. Yeah, you just have to sort of figure out how do you guide the LLM to produce what you want. So my thinking is, if I just give it the context, yeah, if I have sort of the equivalent of, okay, there's this MCP tool that says find me interfaces that are applicable to a certain query. Yeah, it's like make me a syntax rewriter that reindents, for example. Uh, then it would get all the API, and from that it could do a semantic search. If it's too much, to just say, okay, here's this function and this struct, or these 10 things in the project might apply to that. And then the LLM might be able to do something. And then the other thing is to just integrate the source code. Yeah. And what you can do with syntax trees is that instead of a string-based search and replace, you could pass the replacement code into a small mini tree. And if you know, okay, this goes instead of a function or goes in a certain line within a function, yeah, I can just put that into the syntax tree there and not touch any of the other code. So less capable LLMs might then be able to do reliable editing because it's never touching anything it's not supposed to. So that's my thought. Yeah. Right now, all the editing seems to be either producing some diffs or for the most part looking at a search and then replacing it. But the problem is, what if the search is off? There's some extra space or something. Often in Cursor, you get the apply model failed. Yeah, because they seem to have like a small LLM, maybe running even locally or in the cloud, that takes care of integrating the changes uh, from the code generation. So make notification migration helper. What is that supposed to be? What is that supposed to be? I don't need any migration helpers. I just want this to work. Okay, so we have requests, we have notifications, we have responses, we have error responses. And here's the request is now a unique identifier that's non-optional. And notification doesn't have an ID. And the response has an ID. And the response error payload, this still has an optional. So what was the question? I had asked the question. Let's ask it again. Again, comma. Do we need a non-optional ID on the error response? Question mark. Can there be some responses that don't have an ID? Question mark. A parse error would have an ID null. Request server errors. Okay. He thinks it is correct. All right, I agree. So did we commit this? Yeah, we did. So I once or twice showed Cursor how to do commits, and it seems to be doing them now. Yeah, so let's see if test if everything tests. Sometimes it's lazy and skips that, but what it should do, actually do a test, and only if everything passes, then commit. Yeah, and everything passes. Very nice, very nice, very nice. So yeah, and now a piece of comment. Yeah, it wasn't just what can I change in here. Yeah, so the reason why I went into unifying or changing this how JSON RPC messages are told from each other By the way, before I go into that, yeah, let me show you. So I had this in SAE. Yeah, I also have the reindent functionality. Yeah, Swift run SAE demo. Yeah, so that phase one was analyze, phase two was get the errors, and then phase three was actually modifying the files. Yeah, and the first thing that I implemented was distribute. The reason for that is you have often the LLMs like to put everything in single files. Yeah, and we have the example. Do we have an example here? Okay, this is only. Then we have this type aliases. Actually, I want to get rid of those. Are they necessary? Man, why? JSON RPC response. Aha. What is a JSON RPC? It gives back the response data. If I have it like this, create initialize response, why is it not returning the... Okay. So it made itself a shortcut. What I would want it to do is, because here it just calls this, gets the data, yeah, so that the object, and then puts it into the enum, yeah, and I'm thinking that's not necessary. It could right away return the response like that, yeah. So I've removed the backwards compatibility type aliases. Please implement all the functions such that they immediately return a JSON RPC message. Turn a JSON RPC message enum so that you don't have to extra wrap it. And we should see this turn into JSON RPC message and returning the JSON RPC message dot response with this as a payload. And request and request. And we still have these notifications here. So there will be a second switch for handle request. Take a note of that. So stop. I've already done this build, and you see the places where you fix. Yeah, it's most of the time I just wanted to build, see what's wrong there, and then go fix it. Like a junior developer. Yeah, don't ask me to do all of that. Or rather, it wouldn't have asked me to do that, but it would have done some essentially research that it doesn't need to do. Yeah. And it's really, really just, we see the changes, yeah.
I found some web results. can show them if you ask again for your iPhone.
No, thank you. So this is now a message and it's now returning dot response here. Nice. Other places, linter errors, yeah. Can find. I need to fix line 97. Response. Yeah, that's the other thing that the Swift plugin gives me. It gives me actually this error message in here. So you see the error message as well. This is my third and final warning. My third and final attempt for this file. What? I've reached the limit for fixing linter errors on this file. So it only tries to fix 3 times. And at some point would say, okay, I'll come back to that later. Yeah. But nevertheless, this is something in the olden days, yeah, it would be quite painful to go everywhere where this change is necessary. Let me go back and complete. Then accept all. Now there are 3 errors left. So this is now a dot response and then the data. And doesn't it have like make response? Didn't I just see that? Make response. Fix find functions. It can't find one. What build is successful? Build complete. Fatal error. Missing. Before we do that, you have helper functions like make response. Why not use these? So it made itself some convenience functions here, convenience extensions. The one thing I'm slightly torn about is here this should I have the fields that belong to the request in the enum directly or just have one attached value? Yeah, the good thing about attached value is it groups here four things. Yeah, JSON RPC. We technically might not need that because it's always 2.0. So I would have 3 parameters, yeah, ID, method, and params. And on the other hand, now I have data, and then I can just say data dot ID or data dot parameters get it the same way. Yeah, and one way around that would be to have these a convenience initializer here. And by the way, I just noticed it has a make and a convenience initializer. Yeah. So stop. How about these? because then you can just say dot request, and then you have basically the same syntax as you would have. Yeah, typed parameters, but internally everything gets put in the data. Yeah, and of course it has to say, I'm absolutely right. Yeah, yeah, I am. I'm the master here. So in the meantime, I want to just check on my this live streamings. Welcome to the chat. There's also a live stream on YouTube, by the way, now going on for an hour. No chat messages yet. And I don't see any in X either. So people are just too shy. Notifications, what's this? Keep me company. Thank you, Jack Gio, for your like. So it could just say, because this is JSON RPC message, it could just say return dot response. But I'm not going to interfere now. Maybe we'll do that as a second step. So create resources list, and then it returns dot respond, the ID, and the result. Build. There's some warnings and some in the test. Okay, the build. It's now actually only commit when all tests pass, please. So see if there's anything on Twitch. Cocoanetics. All right. Is one linter error? Can't find default calculator. Interesting. Why is that? All right, all right, all right. This make response. Actually, we shouldn't need these. Default calculator, default name calculator. It was a default name calculator, I think. If I just comment this out, does it still build? Yes. So this is where convenience methods. We don't need those. Yeah, while it's doing this, back to SAAE. So I had the issue and I don't know if I still have it in Swift MCP. Yeah, yeah. In this case, I do. So here's the situation that uh, maybe even more prevalent in other ones. Yeah, for the most part, I've done it manually anyway already. Um, so often it so happens that LLMs produce all the all the new declarations in a single file, and that gets to be very, very large. And I found, or I believe that it's beneficial for LLMs to not have more than 100 lines of something to read. Yeah, then you would see reading first 100 lines, reading second 100 lines, and that can be good. So I was thinking possibly for for sake of keeping the uh, for keeping the uh, tool calls low, yeah, um, I would just cut the extra stuff and put them into separate files. Yeah, so if I have, do I have an example? Here's an example. Yeah, so I've got the JSON schema struct, and then I have some extensions. Yeah, there's this without required extension and adding additional restrictions, and we this barely makes it to be below 100 lines. So that probably would be fine. Yeah, but there are many instances where it doesn't stop at 100, but it goes on and on. And what this tool here does, distribute, it takes all the declarations and puts them in separate files. And uh, in doing so, if there are some properties that are file internal or private, if you put the stuff in a separate file, it might have trouble accessing it. Yeah? And so for a component like this, it's probably not necessary to keep something as private. Yeah. If you mesh everything together in one big project, you might need to do that. But normally you have your nice packages, and the package has a public API. That's only what's really necessary, and everything else can be internal. That means can be seen by all the other parts of the project. And so what I was able to do with the SAE distribute, that it not only fixes the file names, makes one declaration per file. If it's a protocol conformance, it makes type plus protocol.swift, and it also adjusts the visibility. And in the end, I was able to run this SAE on the entire SAE project and still have zero compilation errors. So that was nice. And then I was sort of on a roll because uh, syntax rewriters are actually not so difficult to create, and especially not for an AI. So I had one made that reindents my entire project with 4 spaces for every level. Yeah. So what we can do is try to run that later. So you see, this is my default, or rather, I apparently here I still have tabs. So I maybe that could be uh, a parameter to use. What do we use? Yeah, in Xcode settings, source control, no, text editing, indentation. So I recently switched that to spaces. Yeah, the jury is still out. What is better? Do you want tabs or do you want spaces? Yeah, I found spaces are often too big. Yeah, if you copy those to some LLM, then you have the text like going all over, and you possibly want something smaller, like 3 or 4 spaces. But for a long time, I was a fan of tab. Yeah, and now I'm sort of warming to the idea of using spaces for simplicity. And if you re-indent, yeah, the thing is, one thing, for example, I do like is to have uh, indent case labels. So this is indent case labels for Swift and Objective-C. So that not the case is underneath the Swift, but also indented, because to me it's one level lower. Yeah. All right, we're about done here, and it then committed. So the tests all passed, and then it added everything. So even with me fiddling in and deleting these makes, yeah, just run it again one more time for the beauty of it. Yeah. And yeah, so I was about to tell you why do I have this need to refactor the JSON RPC thing. And the reason is that I've started to implement streaming HTTP support for the latest spec improvement of MCP. And there's the scenario that if you support live streaming, you have to support also dealing with an array of JSON RPC messages. And by the same token, uh, in the rare but still possible scenario that there's no SSE channel, so a client just makes a post and sends like 3 notifications and then sends 1 request, he's expecting to get back, and that's an array of JSON RPC messages. It would then also expect to get back an array of JSON RPC responses. And so you have to be able to quickly or easily, elegantly decode what's coming in. Either is it a single one or is it an array? And in the other case, if you have just a single one to send, then you can send the single one as before. But if it's multiple, then you need to put, I think there needs to be certain order of things. First the notifications and then the request, or is that on the on the on the incoming side? I'm not sure, but it turned out to be a bit of a headache to deal with arrays of messages if they're just a protocol. Yeah, so the protocol would loosely group them, and then I would have to do if something as request, then well, now with an enum I can just do a switch. Yeah, and by the way, that reminds me, in the handle, uh, in the handle request function, we need to have a second switch between the types of RPC messages, and we want to rename the function to handle message throughout. So this is going to be a breaking change because the MCP server protocol has this handle request, yeah, but it's actually not just a request. Yeah, it can now also be a notification. And since this is now a message, this should also be message, handle message, so that it discerns between the type. Is it a request? Is it a notification? If it's a notification, then I have those. If it's a request, I have those. Yeah, and in all the other cases, I could ignore it. Yeah, so yeah, here it does it. Yeah, and this is what it does, even though yeah, my preference is to have this indented. Yeah, so of course I cannot do Control I, yeah, to get it properly indented, but this is something that I would want to happen automatically, that I don't need to do that. Sort of like a linter, really. Yeah, and coming to think of it, this SAE exercise, I basically wrote my own linter because it has functions to tell you syntax errors, and it also has functions to make changes to the source code. So handle message. So we have the message. If it's a request, then I handle the request. We still have the handle request. Oh, well, not a bad thing. But so these two changes, these two should be inside the location. So it doesn't need to test yet. Handle notification. Request method. Method not found. So how does it look now? So we now have a handle notification and we have a handle response. We'll never do anything with responses anyway. Handle response. Oh, this is okay. Handle error response. What does it do with that? Results don't respond to error responses. So cool. It fixes everything, it does everything, and in the meantime, I'm talking nonsense. Huh? Git status. So we finally can get to on the simple post in. So the question is, I'm not sure. Data, it is always a single line, but could I conceivably get on a HTTP streaming request also an array of JSON RPC messages on the HTTP streaming? No, actually on the standard IO transport was an array of JSON. The question is really where can an array come? Yeah, so I probably want to be able to support it everywhere, even if the transport doesn't. Can be a batch, yeah, according to the specification. Open transports batch or JSON RPC batch containing one or more requests and the notifications. Okay. So implement batch support for all transports. So what what it proposes is to first decode an array of JSON RPC message, and otherwise decode a single one. Send batch response if any responses. So it collects the responses in an array and sends them those back, and otherwise it does the normal thing. MCP server handle batch JSON RPC batch. What is JSON RPC batch? It's just an array. So the server, actually, I don't want that. Stop, reject. No, please make no change to the MCP server protocol. Just do the aggregating outside of it. Basically, you send all the messages, and for each one, get a response. If there's a response, then add it to the responses array, and if not, then not. And then in the end, send everything back to the transport. So show code. Yeah, it doesn't need that. So let's see what it comes up with for standard transport. Standard IO transport. So this is now, so decode a batch first, receive batch, response, handle message. That's not correct, because what if the response? Okay, if let response means if there's a response, then we add it. Okay, send batch response if any responses were generated. Otherwise, do a single one. And actually, this whole thing could also be an implementation on, it could be part of the MCP server protocol, but it should then be a default implementation. I'm thinking, because otherwise it has to copy this all. So this is now an HTTP handler. Received batch, batch responses, send response. JSON response. Okay, nice. We're getting a unit test. Yeah, the big question is if we run this, if the whole thing still works. So there are warnings in this variable. And it found everything works and it commits it. But so let's see. Swift test. No, still works. So let's test it then. We have the Swift MCP demo. We just run this. And then we have a thing MPX inspector. It should work with Mac Studio Local 2. And here is connect. And we're now on streamable HTTP, so we can list resources. Can we not? Oh, nothing happens. Why? Try SSE, disconnect, connect. Okay, do I have some? Ah, okay, I have a breakpoint. Then it can't work. Hello. So we connect again. Streamable. Connect. Here we are. So list resources works. List templates doesn't work. Why? Receive the expected string. Receive invalid type. What's that? And this is my error. And would there be, let's see, list templates. I get an error on expected string received null message. I think possibly maybe it's missing the ID or something. Might that is exactly looking at the error. MIME type. It shouldn't be null, but rather it should be empty. It shouldn't be there at all. Client expecting MIME is nil, it gets encoded to null in JSON. So this is actually a new functionality that I implemented in MCP server. uh, that you can annotate something as MCP resource, and that becomes an MCP resource, even though it's a function, but it has this URI. And if it has template parameters, then those get properly converted into the type that the function would like to have. So MIME type text plain stop. Actually, what can I do to just omit MIME type if it's nil? String and so let's test it again. But that's not any new thing here. This template, yeah, now it works. So my get user greeting is automatically converted into a resource template, and the description I get from the documentation comments. And if I send the user greetings, so let's say I send 1, 2, 3, read resource, then it returns hello user this, because the function does exactly that, hello user hash number. And what you can also do is have enums, for example, this color message. Where is the color message here? Color message takes a parameter enum. So if you put in, say, red, yeah, it works because here inside the parameter or class, no, not class, function, it decides on this. And if you enter an incorrect value, something that doesn't exist, well, it was expecting color, one of red, green, blue, but received rex. Let's just see, this is actually should be a, it should it be an error, or should it be an error response? Well, this is an error response, but I'm thinking, because there's the distinction, is it an error on the protocol level, or is it actually an error that's, we have this is error somewhere, is error on the response. So this is now an error response, but it could also be a normal response with the message and then is error set to true. What do you think about this scenario? I'm passing something that's not a valid enum, and then I get this error response. The question is if that shouldn't be a normal response where the error message is the message, but is error is set to true. Yeah, so as a tool call, I already do this. So let's look at tools. List tools, do I have somewhere with grid? Yeah, so this is, I've got a throw. If the uh, character is, if the name is too short, then I throw this. So this is the response, but it says is error is true. So this is tool result error. Yeah. So I'm thinking, let's see if it's invalid or missing URI parameter. And so what's now? Get back on the resources color, invalid color. Okay, it's not stupid. Another error. Invalid type array received undefined. And it sent back content. There's a problem here. There's a problem here. With some more. Sup. Content. Contents. But the question is for the resource provider. So I'm kind of get the feeling that I'm going down a wrong path here, because that's now even more stupidity. And I don't, because I expect to get an array back. So I'm thinking maybe we don't want that. No, we're going down a rabbit hole here. I'm thinking the problem is that the resource template always returns an array, and there is no provision, I think, in the MCP protocol to return a text and is error, because that's how tools are being dealt with, not individual resources. So in this case, probably the error response is the correct one, because the parameter passed as the argument for the MCP tool function is wrong for all of them, not just a single one. But what it would want to do is put the error response into a single item of an array of MCP resource content, and that wouldn't ever work. No, we don't want it. Returns content as true. Yeah, but it's not about provide any resources. It's not about not providing any resources, rather that the parameter is wrong. Yeah, you better. No, that's also wrong. Okay. This is now, it's now going off the rails, yeah, because of my stupid question. I have this tendency of asking stupid questions. So we go back. So disconnect, connect, uh, clear this, list this, search users, blah, 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 enter page, enter limit, read resource, works, get color message. If it's an incorrect one, research. Yeah, I think that's the correct one, because this is the one with an error. Yeah, because otherwise, if it's a valid parameter, I expect to return contents and array of MCP resource content with a MIME type, a URI, and a text. And that's how it's supposed to be. So in terms of streaming HTTP, yeah, all of that works. So let's test ping, 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 got the response back. What else? Sampling resources, features list. This is also implemented as a MCP resource thing. Mm. Yeah. So in terms of what does this do? Yeah. So it supports at the moment, I think. Okay, let me actually ask it. Yeah. So right now, what parts of the streamable HTTP protocol does this support? Uh, Streaming HTTP protocol does this support? Uh, I think we have this special case of immediately responding, but we also have the case that when there's a SSE channel being established. Could you have a look? So in the old protocol, there would be a post, no, post, yeah, I think, yeah, a post to the SS/SSE endpoint. Then it would return a URL for where to send messages. No, actually, it get the get gets the endpoint, and then from that point on, posts are being made to messages, but the get channel remains open, which is the SSE stream, which goes from server to client. So we have legacy protocol on get SSE, and we have the new one on get/MCP and post MCP. This has an MCP session header. It has batch support for both protocols, SSE connection management with client session tracking. The current MCP always returns immediate HTTP responses instead of using the SSE stream. So missing is response streaming detection, deciding when to stream versus respond immediately, progressive responses, sending partial results, okay, long-running operation support, streaming status updates, cancellation handling, send for streaming cases. So it is quite convenient to immediately answer to all the requests, but at the same time, if there's an SSE connection implemented, then maybe it should be preferred to send those over this channel instead. So what would it involve to decide based on whether there is an active SSE connection for the user based on the ID from the header? Question mark. So if an SSE connection has been established, then we can use the streaming protocol. And if there's not, then we can send the uh, first we need to measure to check if a session has an active connection. Already has a get channel, yeah. So my SSE channel manager does not a lot. Basically just a dictionary, a UUID to a channel. And it can register a new one, it can remove a new one, and all of that is an actor. It can broadcast to all connected clients, for example, pings or notifications, and get channel. If it's active, yeah, as active connections, it might be a good convenience. So what it does is, if it has an active connection, it needs to be internal instead of private. So let's see what changes it made. So the handler, is there any change here? Let's see them. So responses. if has connection, then it sends the 202 accepted and no body. And then the transport handles the request. And that is handle request means it's encoding and sends it to SSE. Well, let us see if that works and what it logs. So clear, list the templates. So this is immediate HTTP response. Disconnect, connect. It's set up an SSE connection. So if I list, yeah, it now sends accepted. And this doesn't output the SSE, I think. Why do I not see SSE messages in the log? NPC, yeah, okay, I misspelled, it seems, yeah, accept. Very smart, very good catch that I misspelled this, yeah. Clear, disconnect, connect, list. And still nothing. Tool, clear, list, get time. No. HTTP logger. Well, not yet. Well, still not being. I see HTTP. This is accepted. Post and response, but no SSE. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's check the time. I think oh fuck. It seems I'm out of time. All right. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching and